Canto 30 Argument. Beatrice descends from heaven, and rebukes the poet. Soon as that polar light fair ornament of the first heaven, which hath never known setting nor rising, nor the shadowy veil of other cloud than sin, to duty there each one convoying. As that lower doth the steersman to his port, stood firmly fixed, forthwith the saintly tribe, who in the van between the griffin and its radiance came, did turn them to the car, as to their rest. And one, as if commissioned from above, in holy chant thrice shouted forth aloud, Come, spouse, from Libanus. And all the rest took up this song. At the last audit, so the blessed sure eyes, from forth his cavern, each uplifting lightly his new vested flesh, as, on the sacred litter, at the voice authoritative of that elder, sprang 100 ministers and messengers of life eternal. Bless thou, who comest, and, oh, they cried, from full hands scatter ye on withering lilies, and, so saying, cast flowers overhead and round them on all sides. I have beheld, ere now, at break of day, the eastern clime all roseate, and the sky oppose, one deep and beautiful serene, and the sun's face so shaded, and with mists attempered, at his rising, that the eye long while endured to sight. Thus, in a cloud of flowers, that from those hands angelic rose, and down within and outside of the car fell showering, in white veil with olive wreath, a virgin in my view appeared, beneath green mantle, robed in hue of living flame, and on my spirit, that so long a time had from her presence felt no shuddering dread, albeit mine eyes discern it or not, there moved a hidden virtue from her, at his touch the power of ancient love was strong within me. No sooner on my vision streaming, smote the heavenly influence, which, years past, and in childhood, thrilled me, than towards Virgil I turned me to leftward, panting, like a babe, that flees for refuge to his mother's breast, if aught of terrified, or worked in woe, and would have cried, There is no dram of blood, that doth not quiver in me. The old flame throws out clear tokens of reviving fire. But Virgil had bereaved us of himself. Virgil, my best loved father, Virgil, he to whom I gave me up for safety, nor all, our prime mother lost, availed to save my undewed cheeks from blur of soiling tears. Dante. Weep not that Virgil leaves thee, nay, weep thou not yet. Behoves thee feel the edge of other sword, and thou shalt weep for that. As to the prower stern, some admiral paces the deck, inspiriting his crew, when mid the sail yards all hands ply aloof. Thus, on the left side of the car, I saw, turning me at the sound of mine own name, which here I am compelled to register, the Virgin stationed. Though before appeared veiled in that festive shower angelical. Towards me, across the stream, she bent her eyes, though from her brow the veil descending, bound with foliage of Minerva, suffered not that I beheld her clearly. Then with act full royal, still insulting o'er her thrall, added, as one who, speaking, keepeth back the bitterest saying, to conclude the speech, observe me well. I am, in sooth, I am Beatrice. What, and hast thou deigned at last approach the mountain? Knewest not, O man, thy happiness is here. Down fell mine eyes on the clear fount, but there, myself espying, recoiled, and sought the greensward, such a weight of shame was on my forehead. With the mien of that stern majesty, which doth surround a mother's presence to her awe-struck child, she looked, a flavor of such bitterness was mingled in her pity. There her words break off, and suddenly the angels sang, in thee, O gracious Lord. My hope hath been, but went no further than, thou, Lord, hast set my feet in ample room of snow, that lies, amidst the living rafters on the back of Italy, congealed, when drifted high and closely piled by rough Sclavonian blasts. Breathe but the land whereon no shadow falls, and straightway melting it distills away, like a fire-wasted taper. Thus was I, without a sigh or tear, or ever these did sing, that, with the chiming of heaven's sphere, still in their warbling chime. But when the strain of dulcet symphony expresseth for me their soft compassion, more than could the words, Virgin, why so consumest him? Then, the ice congealed about my bosom, turned itself to spirit and water, and with anguish forth gushed, through the lips and eyelids, from the heart. Upon the chariot same edge still she stood, immovable, and thus addressed her words to those bright semblances with pity touched. Ye in the eternal day your vigils keep, so that nor night nor slumber, with close stealth, conveys from you a single step, in all the goings on of time. Thence, with more heed I shape mine answer, for his ear intended, who there stands weeping, that the sorrow now may equal the transgression. Not alone through operation of the mighty orbs, that mark each seed to some predestined aim, as with aspect or fortunate or ill the constellations meet, but through benign largesse of heavenly graces, which rain down from such a height as mocks our vision. This man was, in the freshness of his being, such, so gifted virtually, that in him all better habits wondrously had thrived. The more of kindly strength is in the soil, so much doth the evil seed and lack of culture mar it the more, and make it run to wildness. These looks sometime upheld him, for I showed my youthful eyes, and led him by their light in upright walking. Soon as I had reached the threshold of my second age, and changed my mortal for immortal, then he left me, and gave himself to others. When from flesh to spirit I had risen, an increase of beauty and of virtue circled me, I was less dear to him, and valued less. His steps were turned into deceitful ways, following false images of good, that make no promise perfect. Nor avail it me aught to sue for inspirations, with the which I, both in dreams of night, and otherwise, did call him back. Of them, so little recked him. Such depth he fell, that all device was short of his preserving, save that he should view the children of perdition. To this end I visited the poor youths of the dead. And one, who hath conducted him thus high, received my supplications urged with weeping. It were a breaking of God's high decree, if leaves should be passed, and such food tasted, without the cost of some repentant tear. Canto 31 Argument. Beatrice continues her reprehension of Dante, who confesses his error, and falls to the ground. Coming to himself again, he is by Matilda drawn through the waters of Lethe, and presented first to the 4 virgins who figure the cardinal virtues. These in their turn lead him to the griffin, a symbol of our Savior, and the 3 virgins, representing the evangelical virtues, intercede for him with Beatrice, that she would display to him her second beauty. O thou! Her words she thus without delay resuming, turned their point on me, to whom they, with but latter ledge, seemed harsh before. Say thou, who standst beyond the holy stream, if this be true. A charge, so grievous, needs thine own avowal. On my faculty such strange amazement hung, the voice expired imperfect, ere its organs gave it birth. A little space refraining, then she spake, what dost thou muse on? Answer me. The wave on thy remembrances of evil, yet hath done no injury. The mingled sense of fear and of confusion, from my lips, did such a yea produce, as needed help of vision to interpret. As when breaks, in act to be discharged, the crossbow bend beyond its pitch, both nerve and bow are stitched, the flagging weapon feebly hits the mark. Thus, tears and sighs forth gushing, did I burst, beneath the heavy load. And thus my voice was slackened on its way. She straight began. When my desire invited thee to love the good, which sets a bound to our aspirings, what bar of thwarting fosse or link chain did meet thee, that thou so shouldst quit the hope of further progress? Or what bait of ease, or promise of allurement, led thee on elsewhere, that thou elsewhere shouldst rather wait? A bitter sigh I drew, then scarce found voice to answer. Hardly to these sounds my lips gave utterance, wailing, thy fair looks withdrawn, things present, with deceitful pleasures, turned my steps aside. She answering spake, hadst thou been silent, or denied what thou avest, thou hadst not hid thy sin the more, such I observes it. But whene'er the sinner's cheek breaks forth into the precious streaming tears of self-accusing, in our court, the wheel of justice doth run counter to the edge. Howe'er, that thou mayst profit by thy shame for errors past, and that henceforth more strength may arm thee, when thou hear'st the siren voice, lay thou aside the motive to this grief, and lend attentive ear, while I unfold how opposite a way my buried flesh should have impelled thee. Never didst thou spy, in art or nature, aught so passing sweet, as were the limbs that in their beauteous frame enclose me, and are scattered now in dust. The sweetest thing thus failed thee with my death, what, afterward, of moral, should thy wish have tempted? When thou first hadst felt the dart of perishable things, in my departing for better realms, thy wing thou shouldst have pruned to follow me, and never stoop it again, to bite a second blow, for a slight girl, or other god as transient and as vain. The new and inexperienced bird awaits, twice it may be, or thrice, the fowler's aim. But in the sight of one whose plumes are full, in vain the net is spread, the arrow winged. I stood, as children silent and ashamed stand, listening, with their eyes upon the earth, acknowledging their fault, and self-condemned. And she resumed, if, but to hear, thus pains thee, raise thou thy beard, and lo, what sight shall do? But less reluctance yields a sturdy home, rent from his fibres by a blast, that blows from off the pole, or from Yarba's land, than I at her behest my visage raise. And thus the face denoting by the beard, I marked the secret sting her words conveyed. No sooner lifted I mine aspect up, than I perceived those primal creatures cease their flowery sprinkling, and mine eyes beheld, yet unassured and wavering in their view, Beatrice. She, who toward the mystic shape, that joins 2 natures in one form, had turned it, and, even under shadow of her veil, and parted by the verdant rill that flowed between, in loveliness she seemed as much her former self surpassing, as on earth all others she surpassed. Remorseful goad shot sudden through me. Each thing else, the more its love had late beguiled me, now the more was loathsome. On my heart so keenly smote the bitter consciousness, that on the ground o'erpoured I fell. And what my state was then, she knows, who was the cause. When now my strength flowed back, returning outward from the heart, the lady, whom alone I first had seen, I found above me. Loose me not, she cried. Loose not thy hold. And lo, had dragged me high as to my neck into the stream, while she, still as she drew me after, swept along, swift as a shuttle, bounding o'er the wave. The blessed shore approaching, then was heard so sweetly, 2 spurges me, that I may not remember, much less tell the sound. The body staying, her arms expanding, clasped my temples, and immerged me where it was fit the waves should drench me, and, thence raising up, within the 4-fold dance of lovely nymphs presented me so laved, and with their arm they each did cover me. Here are we nymphs, and in the heaven are stars. Or ever earth was visited of Beatrice, we, appointed for her handmaids, tended on her. We to her eyes will lead thee. But the light of gladness, that is in them, well to scan, those yonder 3, of deeper ken than ours, thy sight shall quicken. Thus began their song, and then they led me to the griffin's breast, where, turn it toward us, Beatrice stood. Spare not thy vision. We have stationed thee before the emeralds, whence love, erewhile, hath drawn his weapons on thee. As they spake, 1,000 fervent wishes riveted mine eyes upon her beaming eyes, that stood, still fixed toward the griffin, motionless. As the sun strikes a mirror, even thus within those orbs the twofold being shown, forever varying, in one figure now reflected, now another. Reader, muse how wondrous in my sight it seemed, to mark a thing, albeit steadfast in itself, yet in its image semblance mutable. Full of amaze, and joyous, while my soul fed on the vine, whereof still desire grows with satiety, the other three, with gesture that declared a loftier line, advanced. To their own carol, on they came dancing, in festive ring angelical. Turn, Beatrice, was their song. Oh, turn thy saintly sight on this thy faithful one, who, to behold thee, many a wearisome pace hath measured. Gracious at our prayer, vouchsafe unveil to him thy cheeks, that he may mark thy second beauty, now concealed. O splendor! O sacred light eternal! Who is he, so pale with musing Empyrean shades, or with that found so lavishly imbued, whose spirit should not fail him in the essay to represent thee, such as thou didst seem, when under cope of the still chiming heaven thou gavest to open air, thy charms revealed. Canto 32 Argument. Dante. Is warned not to gaze too fixedly on Beatrice. The procession moves on, accompanied by Matilda, Statius, and Dante, till they reach an exceeding lofty tree, where divers strange chances befall. Mine eyes with such an eager coveting were bent to rid them of their 10 years' thirst, not other sense was waking, and they were fenced on either side from heat of aught, so tangled, in its customate toils, that smile of saintly brightness, drew me to itself, when forcibly, toward the left, my sight the sacred virgins turned, for from their lips I heard the warning sounds. Too fixed a gaze. The while my vision labored, as when laid upon the o'er-strained eyes the sun hath smote. But soon, to lesser object, as the view was now recovered, lesser in respect to that excess of sensible, whence late, I had perforce been sundered, on their right I mark it that glorious army wheel, and turn. Against the sun in sevenfold lights, their front, as when, their bucklers for protection raise, a well-ranged troop, with portly banners curled, wheels circling, ere the whole can change their ground, and thus the goodly regiment of heaven proceeding, all did pass us. Ere the car had sloped his beam, attendant at the wheels the damsels turned, and on the griffin moved the sacred burden, with a pace so smooth, no feather on him trembled. The fair dame, who through the wave had drawn me, accompanied by Statius and myself, pursued the wheel, whose orbit, rolling, marked a lesser arch. Through the high wood, now void, the more her blame, who by the serpent was beguiled, I passed it, with step and cadence to the harmony angelic. Onward had we moved, as far, perchance, as arrow at 3 several flights full winged it sped, when from her station down descended Beatrice. But one voice all murmured at him, circling next a plant to spoil it of flowers and leaf, on every bough, its tresses, spreading more as more they rose, were such, as midst their forest wilds, for height, the Indians might have gazed at. Bless thou, griffin. His beak hath never plucked that tree pleasant to taste, for hence the appetite was warped to evil. Round the stately trunk thus shouted forth the rest, to whom returned the animal twice gendered. Yea, for so the generation of the just are saved. And turning to the cherry pole, to foot he drew it of the widowed branch, and bound there, left unto the stalk whereon it grew. As when large floods of radiance from above stream, with that radiance mingled, which ascends next after setting of the scaly sign, our plants then burgeon, and each wears anew his wonted colors, ere the sun have yoked beneath another star his flamy steeds. Thus putting forth a hue more faint than rose, and deeper than the violet, was renewed the plant, erewhile in all its branches bare. Unearthly was the hymn, which then arose. I understood it not, nor to the end endured the harmony. Had I the skill, to pencil forth how closed the unpitying eyes slumbering, when Syrinx warbled, eyes that paid so dearly for their watching, then, like painter, that with the model paints, I might design the manner of my falling into sleep. But fain who will the slumber cunningly, I pass it by to when I wake, and tell, how suddenly a flash of splendor rent the curtain of my sleep, and one cries out, Arise, what dost thou? As the chosen three, on Tabor's mount, admitted to behold the blossoming of that fair tree, whose fruit is coveted of angels, and doth make perpetual feast in heaven. To themselves returning, at the word whence deeper sleeps were broken, they their tribe diminished saw, both Moses and Elias gone, and changed the stole their master wore. Thus to myself returning, over me beheld I stand the piteous one, who, across the stream, had brought my steps. And where, all doubting, I exclaimed, is Beatrice. See her, she replied, beneath the fresh leaf, seated on its root. Behold the associate choir that circles her. The others, with a melody more sweet and more profound, journeying to higher realms, upon the griffin tend. If there her words were close, I know not, but mine eyes had now ta'en view of her, by whom all other thoughts were barred admittance. On the very ground alone she sat, as she had there been left a guard upon the wain, which I beheld bound to the twiform beast. The 7 nymphs did make themselves a cloister round about her, and, in their hands, upheld those lights secure from blasts of Tentorian and the gusty south. A little while thou shalt be forester here, and citizen shalt be, forever with me, of that true Rome, wherein Christ dwells a Roman, to profit the misguided world. Keep now thine eyes upon the car, and what thou seest, take heed thou write, returning to that place. Thus Beatrice, at his feet inclined devout, at her behest, my thought and eyes as she bade, directed. Never fire, with so swift motion, forth a stormy cloud leaped downward from the welkin's farthest bound, as I beheld the bird of Jove descend down through the tree, and, as he rushed, the rind disparting crushed beneath him, buds much more, and leaflets. On the car, with all his mighty struck, whence, staggering, like a ship it reeled, at random driven, to starboard now, oarcombe, and now to larboard, by the vaulting waves. Next, springing up into the chariot's womb, a fox I saw, with hunger seeming pined of all good food. But, for his ugly sins the saintly maid rebuking him, away scampering he turned, fast as his hide-bound corpse would bear him. Next, from whence before he came, I saw the eagle dart into the hollow of the car, and leave it with his feathers lined. And then a voice, like that which issues forth from heart with sorrow rived, did issue forth from heaven, and O poor bark of mine! It cried, how badly art thou freighted. Then it seemed, that the earth opened, between either wheel, and I beheld a dragon issue thence, that through the chariot fixed his forked train. And like a wasp, that draggeth back the sting, so drawing forth his baleful train, he dragged part of the bottom forth, and went his way, exulting. What remained, as lively turf with green herb, so to clothe itself with plumes, which haply had, with purpose chaste and kind, been offered, and therewith were clothed the wheels, both one and other, and the beam, so quickly, a sigh were not breathed sooner. Thus transformed, the holy structure, through his several parts, did put forth heads, 3 on the beam, and 1 on every side, the first like oxen horned, but with a single horn upon their front, the 4. Like monster, sight hath never seen. Or it met that there sat, secure as rock on mountain's lofty top, a shameless whore, whose ken roved loosely round her. At her side, as he would that none might bear her off, I saw a giant stand, and ever and anon they mingled kisses. But, her lustful eyes chancing on me to wonder, that foul minion scourged her from head to foot all o'er, then full of jealousy, and fierce with rage, unloosed the monster, and dragged it on, so far across the forest, that from me its shades alone shielded the harlot and the new-formed brute.